your third year is like the magic. Like that's when the magic happens and all the effort that you've done in year 1 and 2, they really start to stick. And so I think I had put some pressure on myself. Well, I definitely had put some pressure on myself of like year 3, it's going to be a bang out year. Like this is when, it starts to get easier. I don't have to fight for the business as much and I can like take my foot off the gas a little bit. And that was just not the case for me.
Welcome back to another episode of the Modern Real Estate Mama podcast. We are so excited you are here, and I'm really excited because we have Brenna today as a guest interview. And this is the first interview we've done in almost a year on the podcast. And I'm just really excited for Brenna to share her story with our community and with whoever, is listening or watching this. So, Brenna, can you tell us a little bit about you? Where are you located? All that good stuff.
Sure, absolutely. So my name is Brenna. My last name is Cogliati. People are always super curious how to pronounce it because it has a G in it. And I always tell people, just think of it like lasagna. The G is silent. It's not. So I am 31. I've been in real estate for, I guess I'm closer to 4 years now. But it feels like 40. I think everyone would kind of say that, right? Sometimes it feels longer than it is. I'm located in Lewisburg, North Carolina, which is north of Raleigh. I'm about 45 minutes from Raleigh. Definitely still work the Raleigh area, but I specialize in Franklin County, which is basically just like more of a rural county outside of Raleigh. So we have a lot of times like a little bit more land, that kind of vibe. So a little bit more country, if you will.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Okay. And you have one kiddo, right?
Yes.
Okay. Your daughter. And then is your husband a farmer?
He is. Yes.
Okay. That's fun. What kind of farming does he do?
So he does all kinds of things. So we have chickens, egg-laying chickens. We have chickens for meat, bees, produce. Am I missing anything? I don't think so. Not at least not at this time. Always looking to add. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. And is that a family business, or is that something that you guys started or he started like on his own? Like, I'm just super curious about that. I think when I saw that on your Instagram, I was like, that is so cool. I love that.
I know, it's crazy. We're both like entrepreneurial spirits, I suppose. But no, it is totally not a family business. It's all him. I would say now his parents like have almost shadowed him and have started kind of getting into farming too. But It was all just his like entrepreneurial, like he's just passionate about growing food for people. So it's pretty cool.
Cool. I love that. Awesome. Okay. Well, that is all really good. And, it's good to see like the background of stuff, but you've been in business for 4 years. What is your background career-wise before you were in real estate?
It would probably be easier for me to say what I haven't tried before real estate. I'm definitely the type of person, like I will throw it to the wall and see what sticks. And I was primarily in medical beforehand, but I specialized more in like the dental field. So closest to starting real estate, I was in ortho, so teeth straightening.
Okay.
But I also did aesthetics for a period of time. I've done pretty much every doctor's office, plastic surgeon kind of thing throughout my life. And then as a teenager, had a ton of customer service experience in the restaurant. But interestingly enough, I got to real estate because I owned my own spray tan business. I did that on the side for many years and ended up spray tanning a real estate agent. And I was like, wow, she has a cool life. I want to be like her. And then that's how
I love that. So what was there something specifically about her lifestyle that you were interested in, or was it just that like everything when you were like talking with her that just seemed like really appealing to you?
Well, I definitely think, I perceived it as the freedom that you have as a real estate agent, which obviously we do have freedom, but those of us in the business know that it's not free at the same time. If you know, you know. But also I just felt we were kind of kindred spirits. We had super similar personalities and kind of piggybacking on the family aspect, I love that she would always say, like, I don't miss my kids' soccer games. I'm present. Like, I'm still a boss, but I'm still
Yeah.
present for my family. And that really resonated with me because I knew I would never have that with a 9 to 5.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So when you got into real estate, how would you say it went? Like, what was your journey like into real estate once you got licensed and started your business?
Yeah, sure. So I started my first year on a team. It wasn't, I wouldn't say it was like a traditional team in the respect that I didn't really receive leads from it.
Yeah.
I pretty much generated my own business myself, which obviously wasn't a ton in my first year, but I closed about 5 deals my first year, which for bringing in on my own, I was pretty proud of.
Yeah.
So started that route and then decided that since I was kind of doing it on my own, I just wanted to branch out and be a solo agent. So I joined a different brokerage and thankfully just have a lot of support there and then have been a solo agent ever since. So yeah.
Okay. Cool. So when I originally reached out to you to be on the podcast, it's specifically because, I mean, we're connected on Instagram,
Yeah.
but it's specifically because one of your posts, and you were talking a little bit about your journey and like kind of feeling like you were maybe going to quit, not sure if real estate really was the right thing for you.
Mhm.
And I want you to talk about this, but you came out on the other side. And, a lot of agents aren't hearing about these hard, low moments where you really have to kind of tough it out
Mhm.
in order to get to the good stuff, in order to have kind of that breakthrough. So I'd love for you to share your journey there. And I think that coincided a lot with your pregnancy too. I think, and your journey into being a mom in real estate, because up until, your daughter's almost a year.
7 months.
Okay. So, I mean, you are new to being a mom in real estate, right? Which is a huge transition. Like, it's one thing to be in real estate, it's one thing to be a mom. And I say, like, if you're becoming a new mom or you're becoming a new agent and you are a mom, it's a whole different beast than just you're single or even like just married, doing your thing in real estate. Like, it's a whole different beast. So I'd love just take us through that journey and like all the things that you were thinking and feeling and experiencing and like, what it was like to be able to kind of go through that and still come out on the other side. And I would say come out on the other side and find kind of your path and a little bit more success and just, not really being stuck in that low season, if
Sure.
you will.
Absolutely. Well, I first want to just say, I had this idea in my head that your third year is like the magic. Like that's when the magic happens and all the effort that you've done in year 1 and 2, they really start to stick. And so I think I had put some pressure on myself. Well, I definitely had put some pressure on myself of like year 3, it's going to be a bang out year. Like this is when, it starts to get easier. I don't have to fight for the business as much and I can like take my foot off the gas a little bit. And that was just not the case for me. I would definitely say I had more opportunities in year 3. However, I just had a lot of horrible situations happen, like out of my control, like clients, divorcing, changing paths.
Yeah.
Of course, a few people kind of screwing you over. It happens to us all.
Yeah.
But I was just facing rejection after rejection. And I would just constantly like felt like I was just like dusting my shoulders off. And I'll be honest, I was looking for jobs at the same time because I was like, how am I going to make this work? And within that process, because I pretty much experienced it was a lot of rejection. I want to say like 7 to 8 different transactions, like a lot.
Yeah.
Um, so earlier in the year, as I faced those, I decided to like really buckle down on social media, like more than I ever had, primarily on TikTok, which is, I know, maybe controversial, but I thought I don't, I don't have the funds. What is free for me? So I
Yeah.
would do home tours, but I would also just do real life scenarios of just me talking
Yeah.
about the real life of real estate, because I do feel, and I'll kind of link back to this later, but I do feel like realtors put on this face all the time of like, hustle, 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 and they don't share the rejection. And so I've made it a point to share the rejection so that people see. I think it also proves our value as agents, right? Like we're not just constantly like selling and everything's easy and yada yada
Yeah.
yada. So anyway, kind of focused on that. And yeah, then I found out I was pregnant in about, I guess it was June. And I was like, hold the phone. This is, I'm scared. so,
Okay. Yeah.
just because business hadn't been good. And I'm like, well, how am I going to provide for a kid, you know? And the pressure was definitely on. There was some things going on personally. My husband had lost a job or two out of his control. So, just high pressure situation. And I could have quit, but I decided not to. I said, I have literally poured every ounce of myself into my business over the last, we'll call it 2-ish years at that point.
Yeah.
Um, I have to see this through. And there was just, call it an inner voice, call it God, call it whatever you believe in. For me, that's God just pushing me to keep going. And so I did, and I just continued. I would get out of bed, pregnant, not feeling it, but I was like, okay, we're going to do this. And then sure enough, I have no other way of saying it than just it was persistence and keeping with it. Honestly,
Yeah.
like the end of 2023, things started really picking up. Of course, when I'm like swollen and pregnant and don't want to like show houses,
Right.
but yes, it definitely picked up. So, yeah, and just kind of going back to that post, obviously things have changed for me this year, which is huge, but I am always transparent on social media. I think sometimes it can be controversial because I'm so open and honest and vulnerable, but I have a lot of consumers, not just agents, message me and be like, I'm so sorry this is happening. And again, I just think it gives them that layer of like, oh, I didn't understand that
Yeah.
part of the business, you know?
Yeah. And I think, everybody has their own way too of like how they approach that. But if you look at what's happening in the real estate industry right now, there is a lot of misconception from the
Oh, yeah.
public about how well real estate agents are really doing and what that whole, like they do think things that are like they're not seeing everything behind the scenes. And it's like, okay, well, the only way they're going to know is if the industry starts
Tells you.
talking about it and they become very transparent. This is everything I'm doing before you even become my client. This is everything I'm doing once you're my client. This is everything I'm doing for you after you're my client and you've closed. And this is, what you get from being, having done business with us. And it's, the only way that the perception is going to really change is, if we have less selling sunsets and more of us being
Yep.
transparent and honest and just sharing the journey. And I actually think that's where social media can come into play and be a benefit to agents if they want to take control of the narrative. It's like, okay,
Absolutely.
well, you have this amazing free tool where you could, even if you reached 50 people with the post, just talking about, I mean, that's
Sure.
50 people that potentially didn't know what goes on behind the scenes and what we as agents and this industry has to do. It's just, it is so much more. And I think it's also good. Like clients want to know that like they're getting what they pay for, right? And if they
Of
really
course.
knew, if if they really knew, maybe things would be a little bit different.
Absolutely.
We wouldn't have this miscommunication. Of course, yes, there are bad agents, there are
Of
agents that are
course.
not of course, but I think I love that you have consumers that are reaching out to you and they're like, "Wow, I had no idea." I mean, that's powerful. That is something that now that's something they know. It's in the back of their mind. Whether that's gonna change their whole opinion just like that, it may
Sure.
or may not, but at least you've like, you've opened their eyes to the journey and like what goes into all of this that agents do for their clients, and then what agents also do for the clients that they don't ever get, they don't ever see a commission check from.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think because I've shared those sides of it, I actually have a friend of mine who would be a buyer who I've been in communication with for probably 2 years, off and on, of like, we're not ready, we're ready, we're not ready. And she messaged me recently and she was like, I'm really sorry, but my partner's best friend got her license and I feel obligated to use her. And I could have been like, oh, like be so snotty about it. But at the same time, I want to think that me sharing so openly and vulnerably about that aspect helped her to have the confidence to reach out to me authentically. And I thanked her. I said, I'm not going to be mean to you. If my best friend didn't use me, I would be like beating down her door, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's just a crappy situation. And I was like, if anything changes, I'm here for you. And I think just having that open dialogue makes it so much easier for us. And I think especially the mom aspect of this, we want to be humanized, right? Because we want time with our family.
Yeah.
Well, what better way to do that than to just be honest and be
Yeah.
authentically human and an agent? You are an
Yeah.
agent and a person.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So do you think that there's anything that you see now being a mom in this industry, like you see anything in your business or in the industry, like your perception of it is maybe a little bit different? Or and I only ask because I feel that had I known how much harder and how like I just feel like so much changed when I became a mom.
Oh,
Like that little human comes out of you and it's like your whole world and your perception and like just so many things change. Even
oh yeah.
sometimes like your values and like what you thought was important before, you just
Mhm.
really get that realization of like, okay, no, that's not maybe as what is important. And with that, I just felt like a lot of my view of things that were important in the industry or how I was running my business shifted over time, raising my boys, being, having 2 kids in 2 years. So, what has that looked like, if anything? And if not, that's totally okay too. I'm just always curious.
Well, I'll say two things. Number one, oddly, I think my clients take me more seriously
Mhm.
because they're like, oh, she has a little person to provide for. She's not just a married, gal. For whatever reason, it just, I feel like they take me more seriously and almost like they want to support me more because they know I have more of a family behind me, even though obviously we know being married or even just being in a relationship is a family, but
Right.
neither here nor there.
Yeah.
The other thing, I struggle immensely with comparison, and I think that's the downfall of social media. And I'll be
Yeah.
the first person to own that. I compare myself. I think we all do. I just don't have the same capacity to do that anymore as a mom, because at the end of the day, none of those people who are more successful than me or look better than me or have better content than me pay my bills. And
Yeah.
I do. And I know what goes on inside my four walls. And that's what I have to focus on, even though, sure, I can always do more. But like at the same time, I'm doing the best I can. I'm a new mom, and real
Yeah.
estate agent full time. So I definitely think most of the time it has helped quiet that comparison piece, which has been great.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. Because I mean, I also struggle with comparison and it's crippling, when it gets and there was a time when I think I took like 4 to 5 months off of Instagram completely. Like
That's amazing.
my husband was like, delete this app. Well, he's like, delete all of your social media tonight. We are done. And I was like, I can't do that. And he's like, you literally have to because you're not my wife anymore. Like it was so bad. And I was like, okay, you have to let me keep Facebook because I run Facebook groups. And I was like, that was like my one caveat. I was like, let me keep my Facebook groups because I run, I had the Modern Real Estate Mama, I had my local one.
Yep.
And I was like, and I'm like, and I'm allowed to schedule from a scheduling app posts for the team. And, and then and that it helped a lot, but it can just be so overwhelming. And it's like, we don't know, we don't know anybody else's story. We don't know what has happened or how much time somebody has put into something or what kind of career they had before and connections, and like there's just so many factors, you know what I mean? And it's such a limited view on social to have any kind of comparison because
Mhm.
it's just it's so just so out of our control anyways, and also it's like I do believe that each of our journeys are unique. Like we have to come to something on our own time too. Like if somebody tells me something and I'm not ready to believe it or to hear it, or to do that thing, I'm well, personally, I'm not gonna do it. I'm gonna dig my feet into the ground, and like
A
you're not
hundred.
getting me to it, and I'm gonna have to come to that on my own time. I mean, I am a Taurus, so that's just a little, but it's like, I just think that we each have our own journey. And it's like, it
Oh yeah.
takes away from that journey when that comparison is taking over. And cause it's like, it's always in the back of your mind when you get to that point. So I love that you're like, okay, I've got to focus on me, us, our house, our family, like, and the other stuff, like, I can't control that. So, put the
Most
blinders on a little bit.
most of the time. I still
Yeah.
definitely have my days, especially like being a new mom and just being so busy because I feel like at least the first 7 months is all I can speak on has been like drinking through a fire hose.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm
Yeah.
sure I will, as I settle in, so to speak, I'm sure I will continue that comparison. But for now, I
Yeah.
just don't have the capacity to be like, oh, look at that pretty post she made. I
Yeah.
just have to get out what I can get out. And people on the social media aspect, people can feel your intention in your post. I
Yeah.
really believe that. So I think that's always important too.
It's also something where motherhood and real estate are so similar. There's always changes.
Hmm.
And it's interesting because I feel like you get um like used to something, or
Hmm.
like you kind of get a flow, and
Yep.
then there's like a leap in motherhood, right? Or there's an industry shift in real estate, like, and you're kind of always having to think on your feet and kind of, just like move with the changes.
Absolutely. And I mean, even just thinking of that, like deal to deal, every deal is different. I mean, how many deals have you done where you're like, oh my gosh, I actually feel like I've never done a deal in my life because this one is so different than the last
Oh
one that I.
yeah. Yeah, totally. Or like you deal with a situation and you're like, okay, yeah, I've never dealt with that. And
Yeah.
now I have. And I feel like I just went through the ringer. And okay, cool. Hope I don't have to do that
100%.
again. But if I do, like, at least I'll know maybe what to do better next time.
Yeah. I mean, it only took a year off my life, but at least I learned
Yeah.
something.
I literally feel like sometimes, like, I'm like, I don't know if it's motherhood that has aged me so
Oh,
much, or if it's the fact that, like, for a whole year I just had client after client freaking out and feeling like it was the end of the world. And I'm like, but something did. And I'm not
maybe
sure which, but it was one of them.
or both, maybe.
Yeah, probably. Probably the combination
Yes,
of dealing with both at the same time too. And,
absolutely.
you know, just being like, okay, I'm just trying to survive this
Mm-hmm.
this time right now.
100%.
Do you think that being a mom has made you like more efficient in ways in your business, or kind of like streamline certain processes? Okay, tell us about that, because I feel like moms always want to know in our community about like productivity, scheduling, like efficiency. And I think it's it's super individual, I think, too, for every family, and every agent is going to have kind of different processes. But what does that look like for your business and your life in general?
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's obviously so different. And I just want to say, like, it depends on your childcare too. Like right
Yeah.
now, my husband and I are kind of swapping with who has the baby. Our daughter's not in daycare, like being watched by anyone. So that's certainly challenging. But also, like when I have time to work, like I work. I'm not playing around. I'm not messing around. I sort of think of it as time blocking in its own sense.
Mhm.
Obviously, I don't have those necessarily routine times at this phase in my daughter's life, but I intend to later. And I think that even sometimes I'll set timers. It's so cheesy, but I'll set like a 30-minute timer, and it's almost a game I play with myself of like, how much stuff can I get done? Because sometimes, not sometimes, I'm lying, all the time when there's even two things to do, my mind is just like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. And then when I sit down and do it, I'm like, that genuinely took 7 minutes. Why were you freaking out like it was going to take you 7 hours? So I definitely
Yeah.
think dedicated times, especially like if you can work undistracted, obviously if you have very, very little ones, sometimes that means when they go to bed. But I would
Yeah.
say it made me more efficient.
Yeah. Are you a morning person or a night owl?
That's where I struggle. I'm definitely a morning person. And then, having a baby, she is too. So at
Yeah.
nighttime, I'm like, I can hardly get anything
Yeah.
done because that's when I'm crashing. But yeah, definitely
Yeah.
a morning person.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like people are usually one or the other, right?
Mhm.
And I'm definitely a night person,
Oh,
although that I think is changing. I'm also 31 and I'm like lately cannot stay asleep or stay awake like at night, like for my life. But I used to be like, okay, when my boys were babies and just the sleep was crazy. And I'm like, if I had appointments during the day, I'm like, I have got to get some marketing like working on the business stuff done, and so I would stay up and I would have, not every night, but I'd have like my after they went to sleep or like, later evening work sessions. And it wasn't like ideal, but it got the job done,
yep.
and it was just kind of that season of, I'm working in these time blocks when I don't have a baby
Yep.
nursing and I don't have a toddler on my hip and I'm just working with what I've got. And I feel like sometimes it doesn't look the most efficient, but also like it is what it is. And you make the most of those time periods that you have, or you make the time periods when you can, even if it's like 2 or 3 days a week where you're up
Yeah.
later, up early in the mornings, kind of getting time in to progress your business further, right? Do what you need to do to push it out so that it can grow and get it in front of the people that you want it to. And it's just we make it work, and
You
that's
make it work. You
yeah,
make it work. And again, everyone's situation is so different. That's something I've had to learn is like I have friends with babies in daycare, not bashing that. That's just not what we're doing at this
yeah,
point. I'll sit there and be like, wow, she's like out showing a ton of houses. And I'm like, that's just not the phase of life that I'm currently in. And that's okay. So I think, especially if I can just speak to the new moms out there, please just give yourself some grace. Like if your business is feeding your family and it's not your, goal year, it's going to be okay. There will be a time and place for, foot heavy on the gas.
yeah, for sure. And I would say like the one thing too is having been, my youngest is almost 4 now, and having been removed from them being like babies now.
Yeah.
And I look back and I don't regret how much time I spent in the business or like on my business, right? I regret the times where I wasn't like soaking in those
Present.
little
I know.
moments. And it's like on the one hand, you know, you do what you got to do, like you're providing for your family and you're doing, but I think that in this industry, it can feel a lot like there's pressure that like every goal that you want to hit in real estate needs to be done right now.
Yes.
And, you know, granted, a lot of that messaging is coming from men who are not the primary, like, one
Taker.
watching,
Yeah.
right? Like their family is being watched by
Yeah.
probably their wives or their partner, right? And they're not having the same kind of constraints that we're having. And, you
No.
know, also I think sometimes the mom's motivation and like her desire to be more present is a lot different than, you know, that like go-getter man. It's like we're go-getters in a different way. Like we're like, we want to have a business, but we also want to be providing a great family for our kids. And so I think it's hard when that's the industry messaging, but I I look back and I'm like, I felt so much pressure to have to try to be this like top producer, hit every single goal that I
Yeah.
wanted to do at the same time as navigating these little babies and not not as focused and present as I wanted to be personally as a mom. And I really got like sucked into that. And it's really because it's just everywhere, it's like the in the industry. And so changing the conversation around like if like you have a couple of years where you're having your kids and like they're little and your business doesn't look exactly like what your ideal goals are, like there's still going to be real estate in 5 years, you know
Yep.
what I mean? Like, and we don't have to like we don't have to feel bad if it doesn't look like that ideal version right now when we're also dealing with, transitioning into being moms and
Absolutely.
raising these kids and like figuring out like your family flow and all of that. I just think that that's something that I like wish there was more conversation around. And so I think that's one thing that we can do with like in our community and
A
the
thousand.
podcast is like we all have our own journeys and our own timelines and also just encouraging, each other like it's okay if it doesn't look like you're, like yes, you can get the awards and hit the goals and everything, but also if you don't or you want to like maybe do a little bit less right now, if that's
Yep.
okay too, if that's what you want. Um and
Most definitely.
yeah,
We don't talk about that enough, especially as real estate moms, because I can only speak for myself, but I feel
yeah,
pressure to be a great mom, not only a great mom, but a present mom. But then I'm also a very goal and oriented person and I love my career and I'm not going to give that up. And I'll point blank tell anybody that asks me that. Like I
yeah,
don't intend to quit my job ever to be a stay-at-home mom. Not that there's anything wrong with that if anyone else chooses that. That's just
yeah,
not my journey. But I think you have to be really, you know, you really have to be specific with yourself of like you said, it's okay if you don't hit your goals. Like I'm not going
yeah,
to hit my goals this year, but I brought a baby into the world and still came probably pretty close. So
yeah,
that's okay. So I think
yeah,
again just going back to that comparison and just having honest conversations with people again, maybe we can implement that more in the community of like
yeah,
even just hey, we have the same age kids, maybe we should link up and stuff and talk and have the accountability. Because I have two friends that have babies literally born within days of my daughter, and both of their lives look completely different than mine, obviously. So it's
yeah.
important to remember that, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's and a lot of times we just don't know until we start having those conversations or like talking with people. And, if all we're hearing they're like the industry standard is kind of like, of like the goals and like,
Hmm.
the career ideals. It looks one way. And if
Hmm.
anything that I've learned in real estate is that there's so many ways to do business. There's so
Yes.
many ways to get business and there's so many avenues of creating success that like what my version and your version of success, even though we may have a similar background,
Yep.
we may be, at a similar life stage, they could look completely different because I
Sure.
want, to be home with my kids 3 days a week. And you're
Mhm.
like, you may want something completely different, right? And that alone is going to be like, okay, well, now we need to probably work our business different. We need to focus on different things to hit those goals.
Yep.
And but I also think that's the beauty of it. Like, because
Absolutely.
if we can figure out a way to create the lifestyle and it's going to be hard work, right? It's going to be
Yeah.
hard. no matter what, because this is a very demanding industry, and motherhood itself and parenthood is very demanding, especially when they're super little and they're relying on you for pretty much everything. Like, I will be really excited when both of my boys can like go potty and I'm not hearing, Mom, can you come wipe my butt? Like, you know, but it's like we can create that. We can work really hard to create that lifestyle and the business we want. And we can learn the different ways. We can learn from each other and encourage each other, but also know that we're each going to have our own journey, and it's going to look different in how we get there and what the there even looks like at
Absolutely.
that ideal place, right?
Absolutely. And I think that understanding is all that there needs to be is, everyone's different. Everyone has a different family dynamic, different childcare situations, and different goals. And there's not a right or a wrong. It's what
Yeah,
works for you. And probably what works for you will have to consistently pivot. So,
totally. Yep.
accepting of
Yeah, for sure. So if you could give yourself like an agent who's like you a year ago, one piece of advice, what piece of advice would you give them, or piece of encouragement would you give them, um just from where you're at right now?
So a year ago, if I could tell younger me or like my twin trying to emulate me, which it sounds kind of gross, but I would say keep going and keep your eyes on your own paper. Stop looking at other people. Their journey is not your journey. And what works for them doesn't necessarily work for you. And that's okay. But
Yeah,
keep going.
yeah. I love that. I'm just so excited that we're gonna have this episode on the podcast and share your story. Um, I just was really, when I saw your post, I mean, I love seeing, what you were doing before, but I just loved, you sharing that little bit kind of, it's just a reel, right? So you can only
Yeah.
share so much in one post, but I was
Yeah.
like, we've got to get this girl on the podcast
Well,
because, um, you know, it's good to see just both sides, and somebody
absolutely.
that's been through, maybe not like, nobody wants to have like a season where they're like, okay, this is so freaking hard and I don't know if this is working, but it's also encouraging. And if one mom, takes away from your story and like sees it and is like, okay, all
It's
right,
worth it.
we
Hmm.
can do it. Like, I can get out of this season. Or if I come into a season where it's really tough, like there's hope that I can come out on the other side. I think um, that's really exciting. So tell us the best place to connect with you, and if you have any last parting thoughts for um, moms that are in real estate or soon to be moms in real estate.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my biggest advice for new moms or moms in general is just keep your head down, focus on you. If you're not happy with where your business is right now, evaluate why that is. Is it because you have a lot on your plate and you can't, work the business as much as you want to? That's okay. That's a season. Or is there anything you can outsource to make that easier for you? And then if anyone wants to connect with me, I'm always happy to have open conversations about the struggles of real estate and the highs, of course, but the struggles I think need to be talked about more and normalized more. So, yeah, you can connect with me on Facebook or Instagram. I feel like I comment a lot in the Facebook page. So, you should be able to find me there. And then my Instagram is just my name, Brenna Cogliati. It looks like Cogliati, but maybe you can pop the spelling in.
Yeah,
Then
I'll link your Instagram in the show notes for
perfect.
anybody, and on YouTube too. So anybody that's listening or watching, you guys can go to the show notes and I'll link Brenna's Instagram directly. And if you want to connect with her, grow your referral network. I always love that when I see the ladies connecting, and that's a great way, to be able to, pop a DM over to somebody, kind of start the conversation, and then
Yeah.
should, they need an agent in your area or vice versa. I love, when you actually kind of have a sense rather than when you
Oh,
have to
yeah.
go into a random group. and
And
see if you
type
can talk
search.
to
Yep.
refer.
Oh
And
yeah.
you're like, is this person really good, or is this just some kind of weird referral pod thing going on?
I
And
know.
yeah, because I've like had that where I'm like, I need a referral agent, have to like literally had no contacts, could not for the life of me get a hold of an agent, and then just had to kind of pass them off to somebody
Ugh.
random from a random Facebook group, and it was not a good experience. And I was like, okay, never again.
I know some people are just so hungry, which is not a bad thing, that they just comment and everyone tags them and you're like, they must be great. And then you're like,
Yeah.
oh,
Yeah. Well, the rough thing is when that happens and they're so hungry to get the business and then you pass them off and then they never contact the
yeah.
person that you refer them to. And it's like, okay, well, you really seemed like you wanted the business. Like they were ready. Like I was handing them to you. Like, come on, just give them a. And it's like the craziest thing. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm working on a way actually to create a referral network for the Modern Real Estate Mama as a separate part of the membership.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to make sure that if you want to just be a part of the Modern Real Estate Mama referral network, that you can get access to that. So I'm working on that. I'm hoping to have
Cool.
something soon released. That way everyone can kind of have their official, place for our community. But definitely go connect with Brenna, Franklin County, right?
You got it.
In North Carolina. Okay, cool. And if you guys have any encouraging thoughts, or just want to say thank you to Brenna for sharing her story with us. I know that it's always good to hear when people appreciate you sharing your story and coming on, but I really appreciate it, and I think that this is going to be a valuable episode for our community.
I hope so. Thank you so much for having me. I was honored to even be asked. So thank you. I appreciate
You're
it.
so welcome. I was so excited. I was like, okay, awesome.
Please
I'm
say
like
yes.
ready to get back to bringing on guests and bringing on like highlighting our community. So I was super excited that you said yes.
Yes, absolutely. It's been fun.
Awesome.